All right. Hello. Good morning. My name is Catherine, but you can call me Kat. I think a lot of you are having some good conversations at your table. So we just wanted to open up the session and allow people to get in. We've got some tutorial slides going through, which you can see as to how to use the functionality of AirMeet. So grab a cup, have a seat, and we will get started right at the top of the hour. Talk to you soon. Hi, everyone. It's Kat. Just a quick hello, good morning, good afternoon. If you want to drop into the chat who you are, what organization you're with, and what you're curious to learn more about, that would be fantastic. We're going to get started at the top of the hour. So, we're going to give everybody just another couple of minutes to get in, get settled, grab a cuppa, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Well, hello, hello. I'm seeing the emojis coming across. Thank you so much. Super excited that you guys are here. This is Coffee Club numero cinco. As I'm seeing in the chat, it looks like a lot of you have already found that. We would love to know who you are, what organization you're with, and why are you here today? We're talking about delivering nuanced skills by innovating your content strategy. Super excited for the topic. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Catherine, but you can call me Kat because we are quick friends. A little bit about me. I have been in L&D space for about 20 years. I lovingly call myself a recovering operator. I got my start in sports operations and retail operations, and then pivoted my career into education and learning. So, what else? I've sat on both sides of the table with Filtered. I was a client in 2018 and then moved to the other side of the table in 2021 to help support the fantastic and fabulous people at Filtered in their content intelligence agenda. Super excited about that. My family and I, we live here in Portland, Oregon, US. So it is super early for me. It's 5 a.m. for me. But I know a lot of you in the UK and over in Europe. Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yes, love Portland too. We've got some friends from North Carolina, a bit early for you, but for most of you, it's probably afternoon. So if you are not caffeinated, go ahead and grab a cup and let's get started. So ground rules, some coffee humor, if you will. Safe space. We know that there are a lot of competitors here, but we all are L&D people. So with a little bit of vulnerability, please share so we can learn and harness the brain capacity of this group to better problem solve if you're encountering some issues that you need to go over in your organization. Engage. We want you to be super active. I see the chat going. I've sat in on some of the tables. You guys seem to be a very chatty group, which is exciting. So please continue to engage. We're going to give you lots of opportunity to have conversations and to participate. And then respectful. Everybody has a different opinion, a different background. We all know that you're bringing a wealth of experience to today. So please be respectful of where people are coming from. Dig in deep with some curiosity and ask some great questions. So just a bit of ground rules for you. And you guys have found the chat. So thank you for that. So it is the chat icon. And then if you see at the top of the bar, you also have an opportunity to ask questions in that Q&A bubble. If you click that, post your question, we can actually throw your question up onto the stage instead of having people scroll through the chat and try to find your question that you asked. So leverage Q&A. And then, of course, the emojis. I am all about a good meme, a GIF, an emoji, if you will. So feel free to click on those as you are hearing something that excites you, gets you curious, or is a bit of a hell yeah for you. All right. Thank you. Some thumbs up and celebration. So this is our working agenda. This is why I call it a working agenda, because we will go with where the group wants to go. So we're going to have some awesome keynotes with Jono and Marcus, a bit more on that. And then we're going to do a workshop. So we're going to send you out on a table break to have a great conversation. We've got a networking break, so we will give you time to stretch your legs, move about, or if you want to continue connecting with other people at the table, we will allow you to do that. We will come back at the top of the next hour with a panel with Jono and Marcus and do some Q&A. And the reason why we say workshop number 2 maybe is because if you guys are super conversational, you have a ton of questions for our awesome keynotes, we will stay in panel Q&A instead of sending you out on a table workshop. And then we'll close. And wait, there's more. There's bonus Q&A. So if you have any burning questions for the people that are moderating your tables, for our keynotes, anybody from Filtered that's here, we are happy to stay behind after the session closes to answer questions that maybe are a bit off topic today. So more to come there. Just taking a quick look at the chat. Fantastic. All right. I'm going to bring our first speaker up to the stage. So Jono, over 19 years in L&D. He actually got his start in operational training. So for those of you, a little bit of classroom training. He is passionate about problem solving, which has led him to designing eSnacks, which is actually microlearning before microlearning was actually a thing. We had a good chat. What I found out about Jono is he is super passionate about problem solving, and he also believes that the shortfall of digital is the social element. So super excited to hear more about what he has to say about that. And without further ado, Jono, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can now present.
Great. Thanks, Kat. Thanks for the kind intro, and yeah, welcome to everyone in attendance. I have to say this topic is really interesting. I think it's a hot topic, so I couldn't refuse the invite to share a few of my thoughts and ideas on the topic. So let me get my screen up. Okay, can everyone see that? Someone just needs to say yes. Yeah? Okay, great. So I wanted to share some of my initial reflections on the topic around delivering nuanced skills and innovating your content strategy or innovating a content strategy. These are some of my initial thoughts. So, firstly, from an organizational perspective, as L&D professionals, L&D leaders, we ultimately want strategies that are going to influence some kind of performance needle. From an individual perspective, and I talk about the collective, about ourselves and also our people, we ultimately want strategies that are on our side. So, strategies that work for the organization and for the people. When it comes to skills, developing new skills is hard. It requires motivation, commitment, resilience, patience. We talk about upskilling and reskilling. If you think about reskilling, moving into a new domain of expertise, it's not an easy path. It's not an easy journey. There needs to be a lot of motivation and commitment, and drive from the individual. And then lastly, the aspiration, at least what I've observed in the industry at the moment, is to create an environment that cultivates lifelong learners. So individuals that have this innate love and get fulfillment from or in search of intellectual fulfillment. But really, is lifelong learning enough when it comes to developing new skills? I think probably not. They're slightly different. So what I want to take you through is really what I think are the key building blocks for delivering skills or developing skills, and also thinking about your content strategy and how you can innovate around your content strategy. So 3 key building blocks: skills, content, and experience. So the first question I think we need to ask ourselves is, what skills will create value for our organization and our people? And sometimes we forget about our people, and I think that's where we can get stuck. Organizations can get stuck when it's just too much of a top-down approach. So we need to think about top-down and bottom-up. I came across this quote from Albert Einstein, and it really resonated with me around this particular topic around skills, and really highlights, what I observe in L&D and in my experience is that we're so quick to jump to solutions, and when it comes to skills development, we really need to spend a little bit more time thinking about the skills. How can we contextualize skills for our organization and make it meaningful for our people before we jump into looking at what the content solutions are and what the training programs are and all the lovely L&D initiatives out there. So I think, the first key thing when it comes to skills is really defining the what and making it specific to your organization. So identifying the skills that you believe are important to the organization, and then adding meaning to those skills, giving it some definition. You might also want to have some proficiency level statements. Essentially, what that does is it brings skills to life for your people, but it also helps downstream when you're looking at your content strategy, your assessment strategy, how you're going to validate skills, etc., etc. So if you're looking to use algorithms or AI, the more detail, the more definition you have when it comes to the algorithm, the better the curation of content at the end of the day. What I would say is focus on the key skills. Don't overcook it. One can get overwhelmed by some of the competency libraries out there. The last competency library I worked with was the IBM competency library, and I think it had something like 35,000 different competencies in it. I mean, that's quite overwhelming. So really think about what the key skills are. What are the skills that are going to add value in context, and focus on those skills. And you can always build on top of those skills over time. And then last but not least, connect the dots between skills and career development. If we're thinking about this from an individual's perspective, individuals are going to be investing a lot of time, effort, energy into developing new skills. What's in it for them? Is the intersect between skills and career development something that might be compelling and something that creates that level of motivation that they need to develop skills and new skills? If we move on to content, the next key question is really around how do we source, select, and contextualize content quickly. So when it comes to upskilling and reskilling, I think what's really important is to have a really good knowledge base and diverse opinion as the basis for skills development. And I think this is where curation actually becomes essential to the skills development process. Being able to get the cream to rise to the top in terms of getting the best subject matter expertise out there, not necessarily in your organization, but in the world, and getting diverse opinions so individuals can start developing their own frame of reference and their own understanding around a particular skill. This really gives us an opportunity to think about curation differently and flipping curation on its head. Curation was often an afterthought, where you design a course or you design a program, and then afterwards you've got some curated assets and resources that people can access. We can flip curation on its head and actually make it central to the learning design process using, innovative technologies like filtered content intelligence. It really makes curation possible at speed and in a very qualitative manner. And I'm not saying let's remove internal SMEs from the process. What I'm saying is let's look at a different role for SMEs to play in the role of curation, and that's really to leverage your SMEs to validate, this curated knowledge base, and then help create contextualized content. So your content strategy could be a combination of curation and creation. Now, we've got the skills, we've got the content. We need to think about the experience that brings this all together. And this is bigger than just the learning experience. This is really about the colleague experience within the context of skills development. How do we deliver an experience that makes skills development compelling for our people? I came across this quote from Matt, who is the founder of WordPress. And I really love this quote. Technology is best when it brings people together. And I think, in today's day and age, thinking about how digital learning is really front and center, it's easy to forget about the human element of learning. And the human element is probably one of the most important aspects of learning, not necessarily digital or tech. Tech and digital are enablers, but the human element is really essential to that skills development process. So when it comes to the experience, I'd recommend thinking systemically about the experience you want to deliver. Think about the work, think about the worker, think about the workplace. What are the various levers that you need to pull to create that environment that encourages people to learn and develop new skills? Blend digital with the human elements of skills development. Teaching, mentoring, feedback, social. I think feedback is probably one of the most underutilized tools in learning, but yet one of the most effective, or can be one of the most effective tools to use in learning. And then last but not least, make skills development intentional, not a byproduct of your learning initiatives. So in summary, here's a distilled list of thoughts. Firstly, make skills development meaningful for your organization and its people. Curate knowledge, create context, and then finally leverage tech, but don't forget about the human element. And that is me done.
Wonderful. Thank you for all of that, Jono. I've got lots of notes and I saw a lot of emojis come up. It looks like a lot of energy around the human element when it comes to feedback and kind of that hug that wraps around the technology piece. And I love what you said about leveraging curation and the cream to the top and really positioning your SMEs to be more effective to then go in and validate and free them up to do more higher impact tasks. So fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And next we have Marcus. So like many of us, Marcus found his way into L&D in a roundabout way. Before becoming the chief evangelist at Orbrism, Marcus was an Army officer, a headmaster, and continues to be an active mentor and was recently named to the Forbes Technology Council and HBR Advisory Council. So something that I love about Marcus is super animated. And what he told me is when he had a conversation with the good people at Orbrism, he was like, BS. AI can't do that. Show me. And so he was so wowed, he had to go work for them. So without further ado, Marcus.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kat. Lovely. And yeah, I'll try to keep the animations to a minimum. As I share my screen, thinking about delivering skills, we always tend to come across one hot topic that also the guys this time said to me, why don't you explore that one a little bit today, Marcus? And very happy to do so. And that is critical and creative thinking skills. And, really, really great topic, because make the team smarter. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? I mean, who wouldn't sign up to that? You're basically improving absolutely everything in the organization, and you're only deploying two things. And that is in itself almost absolute genius. Of course, a lot of you know where I'm heading with this. So we've got a very knowledgeable crowd here, but bear with me for a moment. Quiz time. So I want you for a quick moment to think about a critical or creative thinking strategy that you apply. So, when someone gives you a problem to solve, be it at work or be it strategic or be it prior to a meeting, what strategy do you actually apply in order to find a solution? And then think about what are the steps that you apply. Do you go through a set series of steps each time? And then how would you share that approach or teach that to learners? And the main question is, can that in itself be taught? So I'd like to ask you just for a moment to think about that, and maybe put some comments in the chat for us as you're thinking about this one. Let's see what we get here in the chat. So we've got diverge, converge, diverge, converge. Yeah, that's a nice one in terms of how we generally say let's brainstorm, especially in the group. Have we got any other comments on critical thinking strategies that work? Research and looking for examples. Okay. Start with why. Very good. Okay. Evidence-based practice. Absolutely. So here's the thing. Most people find the creative one a bit easier because they say, we allow the wide scope, and then we try to narrow it down, and that tends to be a strategy. But if you want to teach someone to do that, would you just tell them that's what they need to do? Because the moment you want to practice that with them, you're going to need an example, and as soon as you bring in example, you're going to bring in a domain. And it's the same with critical thinking. I mean, people say, go to a quiet room, make sure everything is clear, and then I usually say, and then what? Do I just look at the ceiling until the answer suddenly hits me? What steps did I actually go through? No, I just leaned back and I thought about the problem for a bit. And so we very quickly realize that while clearly critical and creative thinking skills are a thing, we do it all the time. You just did when you thought about the little test I gave you. The problem is teachable, learnable, generic cognitive, critical, and creative thinking skills. Humans do display these, of course, but the thing is, the evidence suggests that they cannot be taught as a standalone skill. So what that means is they're down to a certain domain specificity. That means that skill exists around a certain topic or around a certain situation, and it's usually the result of knowledge, experience, existing mental models, long-term memory, and cognitive flexibility around that domain, topic, or situation. And so you might remember these brain train apps that we had a few years ago that just told everyone that you would just go on the app for 5 minutes a day and you'd be training your brain and you'd be getting cleverer. And well, the thing is, this was looked at and no effect was shown, other than that you would improve exactly on the types of problems that you were faced with on the app, but not anywhere in the real world. So no transferable skills. And why is that? Well, how does the brain work? My favorite example is always from Julie Dirksen, Design for How People Learn. And she looks at the closet that you have at home for your clothes. And while your closet is what it is, it's what it is when you open the doors and there it is, the model of your brain is also similar in terms of that you have shelves. So for example, you have a blue pair of socks and they're in one drawer in the closet, they're in the socks drawer, but they go in so many different shelves in the closet version in our brain, all at the same time. So that closet model works really nicely to think about this. And that model in your brain is the network of your memory and experiences around the socks. So in your brain, the socks go into socks. They go into all things that are blue. They go into all things that go with blue. Things for when it's cold, things you've had for a long time, things that are starting to wash out, things grandma bought you, Christmas gifts. If you had a special experience with those blue socks, be it camping, they might even be on the camping shelf, because every time you think about camping, you might think, oh yeah, I remember that incident with the blue socks. There you go. And so the better you know your closet and the longer you've been facing the things in it, the more flexible you'll be in coming up with the outfits that fit a certain day, temperature, setting, style, etc. And by going through the different shelves in the brain version of your closet, that's problem solving right there. That's creativity. And so what do we need to train and learn in order to achieve impactful training and learning for someone's role and for their development in reskilling and upskilling? Well, let's simply look at how good learning works. And good learning includes, of course, we all come from that angle. It includes variation, interleaving. It includes spaced out retrieval, spaced out practice, contextualization. Great. And how do we choose the difficulty for each learner? Pretty straightforward as well. We all know Vygotsky, who talked about the zone of proximal development, where there's this space between what you can do really easily and what you can't do no matter the support you get. And that's the space where learning happens. And Csikszentmihalyi talked about the flow state between too easy so that it's mind-numbingly boring and you learn nothing, and too hard so that it's frustrating and you're willing to immediately give up. And that flow that zone flow is where the experiences are compelling and where I'm learning and where I'm moving forward. So when challenged with a problem or situation to solve, especially the one that we haven't encountered before, we have to think, we have to be creative. And the more practical and contextual our practice is and has been, the more we improve our experience and approach and confidence to such problems and situations and similar ones. And then we improve our cognitive flexibility. We create basically in our brain more shelves, more connections, and that happens through more practice and gives us higher mental agility. And yes, the practice needs to be challenging. We know that from good learning. It must feel a bit effortful. You know, it's allowed to be a little bit of fun, but it must feel effortful. And we also don't want it to be too emotional. We know that too positive emotions and too negative emotions hinder memories. So that's where we always come across this critical question of gamification, both from the fun angle as well as from, you know, we'd rather have intrinsic motivation than extrinsic motivation. And there we go. So all we know about really good learning and training is exactly what we need to improve the ability to transfer knowledge and experience and skills within or around a certain domain. So depending on the level of the learner, basic, intermediate, advanced, we realize that this is exactly what we should be doing in good learning environments anyway. And that is because we're adding to our brain closet new pieces. We're organizing our closet better through memory associations, through practice and contextualization, and ability to match the right things with one another for the right occasion, applied contextualization and problem solving. So great learning improves the cognitive flexibility, the critical thinking, and the creativity. And if we're doing great learning and training, we're doing everything right to promote those, just as an aside. So what then do we focus on when we're teaching specific skills? Well, we want to, of course, look at four things here mainly. We want to leverage a range of great content for learning and practice and contextualization. That's absolutely key, that we have fantastic content there. And we want to leverage technology. Jonah mentioned this, such as AI for automation, for the tagging bit, for the creation and for the curation. We want to pull out the right piece at the right time for the right learner. And that's where technology is unbelievably powerful. And these learning experiences, they will still be done and created by humans. I've also just published an article with Clark Quinn on this in Learning Solutions magazine. If anyone's interested, that might be another little brain teaser there if you like the topic. And then what we're looking for is, with those in place, with it, we can then deploy state-of-the-art digital and hybrid training. And here's the trick. While the digital is really advancing, the really fantastic thing is that we can now also leverage a whole new realm of learning analytics, driving powerful insights for data-driven decision makings for individuals, for groups, and for, as Jono said, continuous learning is not an event, continuous workshops, training, mentoring, and coaching. And it's really an exciting time to be part of this journey. And yeah, so interestingly, creative and critical thinking skills just loops us back to really good learning practice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcus. Some things that I wrote down, and I also saw some stuff come through the chat. I'm always fascinated about the neuroscience of learning. So I love that you gave a nod to how the brain works and how do you create those like new neural networks in order to have the shelves in your brain, if you will. And I love what you said around the right piece, the right time, the right learner. I think that just-in-time learning versus let's boil the ocean and give you everything, so critical. And then continuous learning, I think we've known, you know, the studies show that its shelf life of any skill is 2 years. So how are you constantly kind of retooling, reskilling, re-upping, kind of giving your skill set a glow up, if you will? So excited about all of that. So thank you, Jono, Marcus, a lot of awesome fodder. Love that you're taking a sip of cuppa there. All right. So where are we now? So we are going to head out into our workshop. So let me get to some directions there. All right. So we are now in our workshop piece. So what that means is once we stop sharing screen and we send you off on a conversation, for those of you that have maybe joined a little bit after we started, you may not be seated at a table. So the way you do that is when we go back out, you'll be able to join one of the tables and have a conversation. And we've got some awesome table moderators for you today. We've got Fedor here. He's a founder and CEO at Kaminsky. Steph is here from Capita as well. I think Vin needed to jump off. Reg may still be around. We've got Toby Harris from Filtered. I'll jump out and have a conversation too. So we're gonna send you off to have a good chat about what you heard, what compelled you so much from what you heard from Jono or Marcus to actually take note of it. So we're gonna send you off to have a conversation. And we will come back in debrief. So as you go out to have your conversation, we do need for you to assign a spokesperson for your group. And when you do that, we'll have you click raise hand if you're the spokesperson for the table, and then you will join me up on stage to debrief what you had a chat about. So we're going to send you out to have a conversation for the next 10 minutes, and we will bring you back, and I'll give you just a 2-minute warning and a 30-second warning before we do so. Have a great conversation, everybody. Well, hello. Fancy meeting you here. All right. So I did not hold my promise that I would give you a time check. So hopefully we did not cut you off mid-sentence. But I am so curious to hear what you had to say, what you talked about during your conversation at the table group. So we're going to put Jono and Marcus back on stage with me. And I think we asked for each of you to have a spokesperson. So if you are the spokesperson, if you can kindly raise your hand using the tools at the bottom, we will bring you up stage to debrief the incredible conversation you had at your table. So, or you pop it into the chat. I really keep ruminating, Jono, around what you said around competencies, and how true it is that we often throw out so many competencies. I think about my experience with FYI and Lominger. All right, so Steph said we didn't quite get to a spokesperson. So Anastasia or Viv. Oh, and it looks like Sarah. All right, so Sarah. It looks like you're unmuted. Oh, we lost Sarah. All right. She's back.
Hang on, it helps if I unmute myself. I volunteer myself as tribute. So on our table, we were the curiosity table, and we were curious about, we had a lot of folk, it sounded like most folk on the table came from a consultancy background, and we're quite surprised that they were being brought in to lead on projects or help thinking that actually could have been done successfully internally, and also purchasing decisions that were just kind of like, here's money to make the money to make the problem go away, and also other instances where you have more, up to 5 LMSs, or the head of L&D being utterly surprised that the business actually did have an LMS in the first place. And I think we were really at the nascent stages of thinking about that whole piece about defining the what and making it specific to your business rather than just being seen to do something. And while I'm holding the microphone, I have the power. I'd just like to say that, Jono, I really appreciated your point about is lifelong learning enough for developing skills. I come from an education institution, and everyone is motivated for continuous professional development. And what we're realizing is actually there's a gap between that link between career progression for the business and for the individuals experiencing professional growth. And so this is why we're starting to look at the skills route. And your articulation was a really helpful eureka moment for me. So thank you.
Great.
And I'm done. I'm done speaking.
Thank you for the feedback.
Great. Yeah, couldn't agree with you more there on defining the what and really honing in on that before you get into problem solving. And God, it's just mind blowing as consultants, like working with heads of L&D and like we have an LMS. What? I'm just.
We have 5. We've got 5 LMSs.
Lord. All right. So they breed. Yes, they're like rabbits, apparently. All right. So yes, I think we had someone else at another table willing to come forward and share. I think we only have 2 tables. Who wants to debrief for the second table?
I think we had some really good. Oh, there she is.
I think. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Great. So apologies. Yeah, I feel like I did most of the talking, so I'm going to take that hat to debrief. So the frame that we had or discussion that's kind of most stood out from both of the presentations, which I really enjoyed. I think something that stood out for me from the first sort of, Jonah, what you talked about is more around the importance of connecting what's the value for when we're thinking about new skills or new areas, because very often we tend to think about, we put the organization first. And I gave my example around, particularly around what are the key successful ingredients to enable learning culture. And I like how Marcus sort of also brought it, kind of really consolidate this around that it's less about sort of pushing the certain sort of skills or content, but it's more around equipping individual with the right ingredients. So basically how to fish versus bringing the fish directly to them. And my second insight was more particularly related to what Marcus talked. I call this the importance of coherence. So very often is think about before we start something new, really connect on the why, but also how does this connect with existing sort of strategy approaches or existing links that we've already created for our individuals, again, to help this make easier, but also valuable and impactful. That's the reason I think these are my key takeaways, but I think, Marcus, you might have, you had some other good reflections. Please shout.
Well, I just said to Anastasia mentioned how they're currently on a journey of giving people more responsibility and saying, take charge of your own personal development and growth at all levels within the organization. And I said that is really the key here in order to create that culture. It's so often talked about, but it's hardly ever done, and even rarer done well. Giving people that responsibility and that accountability and making that part of a culture will create a culture where learning is considered to be normal. And then learning comes with ideas for innovation. It comes with making mistakes. It's about trying new things, and sometimes they work out incredibly well and sometimes they don't. And then we go back to the drawing board. That's learning and that's innovation. The only difference between learning and innovation is in learning, someone already knew the answer, and in innovation, no one did yet. So if you want to have a good organization, that's the place to start. The people often say their biggest problem is time. It's not. If the culture was right, time would not be the problem. If the culture is wrong, don't just give people more time, because you will not end up in a better place.
Yeah. And I see in the chat, you added shifting from tell me what to do to I'm driving my own development. And that's fantastic. I love the taking charge of your own development. It's like, go get it. This career culture and, you know, the behaviors of the organization really need to support, if that's the new charge, the manager behaviors have to support that, right? So making sure that they're supportive and, you know, they're not bucket of cold water, if you will, of, well, why are you watching that TED Talk? Or why are you reading that book? It's like, it's helping. Yep. So anyway, a lot of head nods on that one. All right.
And that also, if I may, that also really nicely then ties in with what Jono said about jumping to the conclusion. If you're surrounded by people who think in that way, and you have that culture established, then we will stop the jumping to the conclusion, because we're surrounded by people who consider learning and innovation a normal part of the process, not asking a question and then 5 minutes later we've started building a course.
Yep. Because we like to do that. And I love the term of importance of coherence, and getting to the why. I think, Simon Sinek, golden circle, the why, the what, the how, right? So fantastic. So we are now going into break. So you've got 10 minutes to get up, stretch your legs, grab another beverage if you need it. And then we're going to come back and we are going to have our friends back on the panel, and we are going to have them answer some of your burning questions. So if you've got some questions, please put them into the Q&A. We kind of lose track of them in the chat. So there's a Q&A bubble icon at the top of your screen on the right-hand side. If you want to click that and then type in your question, we can throw it onto the screen, and we'll be back for Jono and Marcus to answer all of those questions. And we will see you at the top of the hour. Bye, guys.
See you soon.
See you soon.
All right, we are back. I'm curious to know, I'm going to open up my chat. Are you guys back in the main stage? Did I give you enough time to go do what you needed to do and come back? You can pop into the chat. Let me know who's here. Yes, Marcus, I knew. All good. Okay, thank you. How about our audience? We've got Jono, Marcus, and then we brought Steph up on panel. She's got some great experience that we'd love to lean on and have her part of the conversation. I'm seeing some thumbs up. So yes, you guys are back. Fantastic. So as we were on break, we were having a chat about what everything was shared and talking about the panel. So I think the plan is for us just to stay in the main session for the next 20 or so minutes and just have a conversation, panel Q&A, keep it pretty loose and casual. But something that Toby shared was, this great tie-in to librarians over across the pond, if you will. So there are actually two librarians. We were talking about L&D people being kind of librarians, if you will, but knowing that there's two, there's one librarian who will actually go get the books for you, who will go into the library in the hundreds, thousands of assets, go find the book and bring it off the shelf for you. But then there's this other librarian who sits at a desk and has a conversation with you to understand what you're looking for, to better research the topic, to find the more applicable book for you. And it's such a beautiful analogy of how we are in the L&D space. So are we just the L&D people who are the order takers who go out and who get the things for you and bring it back? Or are we the ones that stand at the desk, engage in a conversation, ask a lot of great questions to then find the right source for you? So kind of this, are you in this runaround dilemma of going and getting things and you're just so hurried, or are you being very thoughtful and intentional with your efforts? So yeah, I love that. Can I borrow that? And the quote, great stuff. I like that. Bad libraries build collections. Good libraries build services. Great libraries build communities. Awesome. So that's exactly why you're on the panel, Steph. Loading these nuggets of knowledge. All right. So my question to the group, to Jono, Marcus, Steph, I would love to know, where do you find a lot of resistance in relation to technology, of bringing technology in to unlock your learning strategy? Because you both talked very wonderfully about, this dynamic of there's this human component that will help, but there's also the sexiness of technology. So when do the two come in and hold hands, and where do you find resistance to not even letting that be part of the engagement process?
Yeah, I think on the skills side of things, having the technology that enables a skills marketplace or a talent marketplace, that's a relatively new genre in the tech space. But yeah, I don't. It's not widely adopted across organizations at this stage. Yeah, Marcus, Steph, do you want to add?
I think it's not actually resistance as such. I think there's that sense of discomfort with the unknown. The sense of discomfort if there's an algorithm involved, or even worse, it's AI, then it's uncontrollable. It'll do its own thing. I don't understand it. How can I use something like that? When I buy a push bike, I know what I'm getting and I know what I need to do to make it work. So there, then I can choose which color I want and what kind of wheels I like. So I think there's a real discussion to be had around where is the technology heading? What does it do? What does it do particularly well? And where are the technology's strengths? And then also in parallel to that, where are the human strengths? There's things that humans do far better than technology, and there's things that the technologies do far better than humans. If we're willing to engage into discussing that more and taking that discomfort away, then I think we don't need to talk about people are resisting to the change or resisting technology. But I think that's pretty much what it is. If we've understood what the tool in the box does and what it's good for, and when not to use it, that's when we're usually happy to start using the tool.
Yeah, love that. And it's the fear of the unknown, getting a better understanding of what the technology can do versus, sometimes I think humans, we do this, anything you can do, I can do better. So it's kind of this, right? And Steph, it sounds like you've got an opinion. I'm seeing a lot of head nodding from you.
Yeah, I think it's, I think we've touched on it, the kind of concept of understanding the problem before jumping to the solution is such a typical human kind of trait. We want to get to that solution before we've actually really dug into the depths of, understanding what the problem is, where does it come from, what's the source of it, to then find the most suitable solution. So I think when people hear the word kind of technology and something that they could hook onto as a good solution, it becomes a natural inclination to go straight towards it rather than step back, reflect. I also think there's a massive complexity in terms of knowledge, skills, abilities, however we categorize these things. Specifically thinking about the soft skills space, that has such a more complex dimension than technical skills or knowledge necessarily, because they're things where we think someone needs to train to be a data analyst. There's a much more structured set of technical skills that might go with that, as opposed to leadership and management, which, as we all know, has been on the agenda massively for, well, forever, but particularly is coming to the spotlight a lot more. So I think it's then using technology in nuanced ways to deliver those very different types of knowledge or skills is where it becomes very complicated and difficult.
Yeah, I love what you talk about with the complexity and, a technical skill versus more of that kind of human soft skill, which those can be a bit like jelly and trying to nail into a wall. It's difficult to do because they morph and they can mean different things to different people. So I love that you bring that up. And it looks like we've got a question from Simon into the chat as well. So Simon, I'm going to get to that question in just a moment, but it looks like Viv posted, technology is doing an increasingly good job of serving up relevant content. Learning involves more than content, especially experiences, which both John and Marcus spoke very well of. So how are you helping seeing organizations leverage technology to enhance the experiences that people learn from? Fantastic question. I don't know who wants to tackle that one first, but would love to hear what you have to say.
I think there's a real thing to be said about the interplay between technology and the human led, as I usually call it, part of the learning, of the practice, of the workshop, of the mentoring and coaching and fine-tuning your skills journey. And the technology will play its role in where the handover happens from the asynchronous digital bit, where everyone can do their own thing. It doesn't have to be digital, but let's call it the asynchronous bit, where someone is taking responsibility for their own learning journey. They're working, they're looking at maybe a book, they're looking at a digital course that they're working on. And then in the handover piece is where technology can really help us, because when we utilize AI technology in learning to do a learning needs analysis for a person or for a group, to measure competencies and confidences, and then present those to the person who's going to run the workshop, to the human-led trainer or coach. That handover is then going to be incredibly useful. And I've said this on numerous occasions already in the last few months. We're actually talking about moving away from the one-size-fits-all in-person-led engagement in learning. Because I tend to say, if someone last week rocked up with the same slide that they rocked up this week with, then yes, it might be in person, but you did no research on the group. You have no idea who you're in front of. You're just running that same half-day workshop with the same slides. At the end, there might be questions. Let's call that personalized. No, we need to move away also from one size fits all on the in-person side, and that's where technology will play the largest role. And I think that's also one of those elements of the understanding that we have to have an open and honest conversation. And sometimes I feel that the tech side is promoting that this is the solution for everything, and the L&D side is saying, look, we're being told from all angles that everyone has the solution for everything. We don't even know where to listen and how to compartmentalize the information that we've got. So we need to have an open and honest conversation in the middle about what does which job, what are we trying to achieve, takes us back to Jono, and how do we bring those elements together, and then with a confident and good understanding of where the technology does its role and where the humans will continue doing best what they've always done best.
Yeah, love that. And not taking a peanut butter approach to when you do have that valuable in-person time. So how do you make it just for them? So kind of bringing in the group's DNA, if you will, around the confidence and competence around what you're teaching. John or Steph, what else would you like to add to that?
Yeah, just to build on that, I think it's really interesting, particularly when we're thinking about the hybrid environment. I think a lot of customers that we talk to are very much facing the challenge of, I hate to bring up the pandemic, but throughout the pandemic, we saw quite a clear shift from face-to-face to virtual classrooms, for example. And then obviously now thinking about actually, what does that blend look like in a hybrid world where work is ever more individualized? And we're seeing that, as Mark said, you can't sheep dip. That approach didn't really work before, but definitely doesn't now. So I think revising and reviewing the different channels, and I think the key word in that question is leverage. So customers as well are specifically asking about leveraging existing tech, and it might not be complicated technologies. It might be something like an online whiteboard, a collaboration tool. We've been using Miro a lot, for example, to just, collaborate. And I'm of the opinion that if you are now bringing people together in an environment, people that might be working in a hybrid way, it should very much be focused on collaboration, thinking about the type of content and the objectives for that, and the best channel and setup, which is, designing meetings in an effective way is an art in itself. So, I now don't want to go to an away day and be given updates, because I could get that in a video or a snippet, or it can be content that's given to me online somehow. But I think it's really maximizing that time and space to collaborate and bring the human aspect of problem solving to it, where we will all learn together, as opposed to, just kind of giving people content at the right time. So I think that's very much in terms of using technology where customers' heads are. How do we actually revise and review the right blend in ever more personalized, individualized ways for people?
Yeah, love that. And your nod to the pandemic, I think we're hearing so many studies come from what technology did during the pandemic. So how are we learning from the last couple of years to do better? And oddly, I heard about ideation and problem solving, that we're actually less creative when we have cameras on, because we feel this obligation, like, I see you, you need to look at me. So when you're making eye contact, you actually are less able to be creative and problem solve and be innovative. So how do you use the in-person space to kind of bring that to life? So Jono, I see you came off mute. What else?
Yeah, no, I think we've still got a way to go in terms of technology that does bring people together. I was on an interesting red thread research call yesterday, and they were doing some research. Quite a large sample, about 1,500 top performing organizations, 66 different modalities of learning. What was the most effective modality? And job shadowing came out as number one. But we don't really have technology to really support job shadowing, in a digital world. So the human elements are still coming out on top. Feedback, job shadowing, coaching, mentoring, teaching. But are our technologies where they need to be to support these more human interactions?
Yeah, there was a lot of energy in the chat when it came to feedback, and how valuable that is when it comes to the actual application of learning. And then I'm going to go back to Simon. But before I do that, Viv, did that answer your question? If you want to pop into the chat. Okay, I'm getting thumbs up. Cool. All right, Simon, you are up on stage with us. And I saw that you had a chat. I'm scrolling, and as I'm scrolling, things keep coming up. What question did you have for the panel?
I've got a question. It was just a comment on what Jono said. So I just finished quite a big program in North America. And what really was alarming for me, the CEO contacted me and wanted a number of the learning assets, and he wanted me to email them to him. And I said, well, why? It's all on the platform. You've got all this stuff. He says, no, I want to print it all off and run groups. Now, that's quite flattering, because, he still wants to use it. He's engaged in the learning, and that is flattering. But B, that really reinforced we didn't hit the social element right. We got it wrong. So there's a bit of a mixed message there. And I think it's something that I really taken from it. And I'm always going to struggle with, and fellow professionals are struggling with, creating that social element, that buy-in, which is crucial. That. But what I really want to get my head around is really think about what Marcus was talking about. And Marcus, this is not my bailiwick. You're going algorithms, AI, and all this stuff. So, and then I was thinking, I would like to hear a vignette of where you've won a client over, or how you've reduced this and said, look, what I'm really trying to say is, a lot of L&D professionals, they're behind the curve on this. They're nowhere near your level of knowledge. And you're trying to introduce them to something that they probably have a fear factor over. So how do you I'm just interested, how do you bridge that fear factor is my exam question.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what is really critical there is that we're seeing a lot more efforts in putting the information out there and sharing and talking about it. And even the old LinkedIn that is becoming a little bit more of a Facebook these days than a professional network. Even there, you have a lot of L&D people and also technology people who are putting information out there, who are sharing what is good, what works, why does it work, how does it work. And I think we're also seeing a trend that when we look at the big conferences, that they're more interested in bringing speakers in that give an overview, that take the fear away, that take the magic out of it all. And so I think I think there is a gap there, and I think that gap is starting to be filled because people are recognizing that that's what's holding everyone back, because it's in everyone's interest. The divide between I'm trying to sell you the solution for everything, as it's often then promoted. Sorry if I don't want to offend anyone, and the other side saying, yeah, but everyone tells us that. Where do we even start? That gap is helping no one, and I think people are recognizing that. And I think there's a much more mature way of conversation that is now starting, and I see that in a lot of conversation with L&D teams across sectors and regions, is that they expect also in these conversations that time is given to help the understanding. And not just to go through a process, and they're bringing bigger teams on calls and conversations, so that they can listen in. It doesn't just become a gigantic session where everyone gets to speak, but they bring bigger teams with them that want to listen in, that say, I'll be in that session when those questions are asked. I'd like to hear the answer. I'd like to see part of the demo. And so I would be hoping, I'm very positive generally, I'd be hoping that is really where things are heading. And the more L&D people demand this is really this is really the key. The more people demand this, the more it will happen, because it will become part of the service offering that technology providers will have to give. But there has to be the openness to have the conversation. Yeah. If an L&D team is unwilling to speak to anyone at the moment because they're afraid of what might happen, or what's out there, or what others have that they don't have, well, that doesn't help anyone either. So I'm hoping the dialogue is starting to go somewhere.
Yeah. And that, I can't remember if it was Marcus or Jono that mentioned, great technology is going to free up and kind of unshackle, if you will, your L&D people to go then take on more higher impact tasks. So, I think sometimes in the absence of information, people make assumptions of, I'm going to be irrelevant in regards to technology, right? So it will take this on so I can then do that. I think about, has everybody seen the movie Wizard of Oz? And like towards the end, when, they go behind the curtain and actually see what it is, it's not so scary, right? So I think there's a bit of that component, right? I see it's probably a knowing laugh, Marcus.
Absolutely. No, that's exactly it. But Simon, what are your thoughts? Is that was that where you were headed?
It's that sort of joint education piece where it's all moving so fast. We've all got to learn together. And I come from a consultancy background, so I'm very much, I've got two parts of me arguing. One part says, it's fine, we're all learning. And the other part of me saying, Simon, you need to have all the answers. And I go, oh, I can't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't, but I love that sort of the joint, like, let's learn this together and let's work out the art of the possible. I'm sure that's how you grow your client base. Is there, I don't really put you on the spot. Is there anything like as a starter for 10, you said, Simon, go and read this. This is a good way to really, sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but there's something saying this is something you'd really recommend.
It really depends on what depth you want to dive into. I mean, if I've already said in the talk, I've written a short article with Clark Quinn on this, which is in Learning Solutions. The future of ID in an AI world. That will give you a nice little teaser, and then of course Donald Clark has written a whole book on it. And looking at it from all angles, whether it's AI learning or whether it's hybrid learning or chatbots, and he looks at all angles there. So I would say those are the two extremes: the short article and the full book. I
might come back with questions after reading your article.
Absolutely, please.
I might come back and say an even more reduced example again, but thank you. Yes, I will definitely read that. I appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, and Simon, I don't know if you see in the chat, Steph threw something into the chat, a link for a podcast. Steph, it sounds like maybe you've gotten into that. Do you want to give Simon just a quick
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was trying to remember exactly this episode. So it's one I'm quite obsessed with. It's called The Digital Human. It's all about our interaction with technology, but from a very much a kind of philosophical, psychological, and kind of anthropological perspective. So she explores questions such as why are we always looking for our next technology solution as opposed to solving problems in other ways, I guess. So yeah, that one just came to mind as we were talking. I'm sure she talks about things like consumerism as well, and how that has driven that trend in some ways, but how oftentimes the technology we create does not necessarily free us up time-wise. So, she talks about domesticity and housewives and washing machines and things like dishwashers, which actually you just displace the effort. You move the effort into loading the dishwasher, rinsing the dishes, or doing other things. So it's just a very interesting kind of, I guess, slightly more philosophical pondering on the topic of digital innovation and tech solutions.
Thank you. I'm all for displacing effort.
Awesome. Thank you so much for jumping up on stage, Simon, and sharing what's going on with you. Was that helpful? I saw you take lots of notes.
So I'm taking notes and taking these links down. Sorry, will all these links be shared? There's lots of links going in.
Yeah. I can take that absolutely on as an after action. We can post it into the CLO Coffee Club LinkedIn page, and then we can share it out more broadly too.
Thank you. You can drop me off the main screen now, but this is I have to say, this is a first class event. It really is. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for being here. It's fantastic because you guys are super chatty and curious. All right. And it looks like Marcus posted some other things in the chat as well. Thank you for that. What other burning questions do you guys have for the panel? Don't readily see anything in the Q&A. I'm curious to know if you want to put in the chat or if you want to jump on stage, what have you heard today that you're going to take action on besides reading articles, listening to the podcasts that have been shared? It sounds like, you guys are anxious to go in and have some conversations.
I wanted to finish by asking the panel to almost give a pithy summary, because I'm just conscious of the title, delivering nuanced skills, innovating content structure. It's quite a big title, like even delivering a skill is big for an individual, let alone for an organization. And I know that skills is one of those things where we've modified our language. So it's not like an LMS platform now, it's a skill platform. But we actually haven't changed our behavior that much. It's still a massive challenge. So the advice for the person faced with almost starting from zero, in a few sentences, where is a place to start by delivering nuanced skills? So just maybe go around the panel as like a final set of tips.
Great question.
Yeah, I think it's acknowledging that skills development is a long, winding road. There's no silver bullet for it. You do want to cultivate an environment that encourages people to develop skills, so that it becomes something intentional. And we're cultivating skill seekers rather than lifelong learners. I think that's really important. And then I think it's also, taking a multimodal approach. You're not going to solve the skills challenge through one platform, one content library, one training program. It's going to be a combination of things that are going to help you get people to where they need to be. But I think fundamentally, you need a workforce. You need people that are motivated, committed, resilient, and patient. So really, really think about that. Think about it from the individual's perspective.
Love that. I heard, an intentional environment. I love that you call out skill seekers and then multimodal. Wonderful. Thanks, Jono.
I might jump in on that and actually
please do
kind of take a flip side view, actually, that I think in some ways we need to start with the organization and the system. So this is one of my biggest areas of interest when we talk about self-directed curious learners is the environment feasible to allow those behaviors, and that comes down to the culture and the system that creates it. So I think for me as well, it's thinking about, you need to obviously think about all of those layers of individual, team, organization. Those three layers are critical, and I don't know if this is the right answer. My way to start things is always with data research, looking at, what else has someone done and has that worked? But it feels intuitive to look at the system overall and the organization and understand, well, how do we currently think about skills in the organization? How do managers, leaders communicate those things? Does our industry mean we have a specific tendency to develop technical skills and put emphasis on that as opposed to soft skills, for example, because there will be obviously cross-sector difference. And then just thinking about the environment that is set up and whether the individual skills that you then want to develop, you can kind of do a matrix and compare, go, do these individual skills that we're looking at developing, can they thrive in this environment, or have we got barriers? And they might be more cultural, they might even just be purely language specific. But what does that skill mean to everyone that works here? And therefore what will resonate with them, and how can we help them to develop it?
Love that. Love, that you're shining a light on the data and kind of the due diligence of asking great questions and going and finding like who walked the path before and what did they learn?
Yeah, exactly. Because someone's always done it. I think that's, for me, I like thinking about displaced effort, actually, in Simon's point. I like to duplicate effort. There's no point in starting from scratch if something has been done, researched, and as long as you have that critical eye as to where that research came from, where the data came from, is it good? Yeah, absolutely. Why not start with something that's there already?
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay. Marcus.
Tiny question Toby asked there.
He's good at that.
I would say in summary, an organization will know what's most needed right now. It'll be something specific. It won't be a super solution. There'll be specific priorities that are really important right now for business impact, for employee impact, whichever it is. Pick 2 or 3. Have a team that does the leadership. Have a team that looks at the implementation, and get cracking and do it with 2 or 3 strands. Don't just do it with one strand. Don't immediately jump onto the bandwagon of it needs a course, or we need to bring someone external in. And the team on the ground, good communication with those that actually also receive the training, that are supposed to do the learning. What do they need? How do they need it? What has worked in the past? And then good communication with the leadership team that has the overview over the different projects, so that you have a good feedback loop on what has worked, what has not worked so well. And overarching across all of that, absolutely key, failure and lack of success is not a problem. It is part of the process. We do not want people to come back and give us that out of 10 things they tried, 9 worked, and then they have the token bad one in there, because that makes them look good in front of the leadership team, because that's how you have to present. Otherwise, if all 10 are good, it's not realistic, and if less than 7 were good, then you're clearly not a good team. That's where the culture goes wrong. So have those good communications, get cracking, have a feedback loop, and make it about actual learning and innovation. that whole process in itself is innovation. We're building a culture. We're building new ways of working. We can have shadowing, we can have buddying, we can have mentoring and coaching as part of that. We can draw people into workshops and let the people take part of the responsibility and accountability for the process. Don't just place it on top of them and say, here you go, this is what you now need to do. Then you will come out of the other end changed. That's never worked.
Yeah, great point. So much there. I really love that how you talked about innovation and how that comes to fruition only when things don't go so right. So every opportunity to learn something new. So what's working well and what didn't go that we could do different. Fantastic. Yeah. Marcus, Jono, Steph, Fedor, thank you so much for everything in this session, all of the words of wisdom, so much to take from. For those of you that are still here, we are going to post this up on social through LinkedIn. We'll have it, we'll have kind of a quick summary as well. And if you're interested in coming to the next Coffee Club, our Coffee Club 6, we are sharing skills and capabilities across generations. So a little bit building on what we talked about here. So more to come. So thank you for your time. If you need to pop off, totally get that. But we're going to hang out. This is the bonus Q&A if you want to talk anything L&D beyond what the topic of this Coffee Club was. We're happy to hang out and have a chat, but otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.